1943. 19 British bombers take off on a perilous raid into the heart of Nazi Germany.
They're facing fighters, anti-aircraft artillery, radar, and communications.
The man behind the daring raid is a determined engineer named Barnes Wallace.
Wallace would do anything to winning the war.
What are you trying to do? Kill all my boys.
Their mission, destroy the Third Reich's strongest dams.
The dams were the heart of the German industrial empire.
The machine is a radical new weapon, a 5-ton bouncing bomb.
It's a single precision weapon which has to be put into just the right place.
But from the start, the mission is in jeopardy. In the history of man, there are critical chapters that forge together a daring individual, a crucial situation, and an innovative technology. Fate's fusion of man, moment, machine. May 1943. Germany occupies the whole of Western Europe. The Allies can't get a foothold on the continent. Air attack is the only way to slow down the Nazi war machine.
All right, boys, here we go.
3 Lancaster bombers take off from Scampton Royal Air Force Base. The situation in England is bleak, but the men carry with them a fragile hope for a miracle. Hi, I'm Hunter Ellis. The bombers are the first wave of a perilous attack deep into Nazi territory. They're carrying a new and untried weapon designed specifically to destroy the Great Dams of Germany and hopefully help bring a swift end to World War II. Each plane carries a single unproven radical new weapon called a bouncing bomb. It's designed to skip across the water of a reservoir, roll down the face of the dam, and explode, achieving something the British military has wanted to do for a very long time.
The idea of attacking dams emerged in the First World War. At the end of the war, the Chief of the Air Staff in Britain said that long-range operations against an enemy source of power will be the main aim of any future war.
July 1938. As World War II looms, British war planners single out the armaments factories of Germany's Ruhr Valley from a list of German industrial targets. The Germans used 10 tons of water to make 1 ton of steel. Turning off the tap could seriously curtail their war-making capabilities.
The dams were the heart of the German industrial empire. They provided the electricity, they provided drinking water, they provided power. They were just absolutely the backbone of that industrial base.
One dam in particular is a primary target, the Mona. It's a gigantic structure 132 feet high and 112 feet thick at the base. The reservoir holds over 35 billion gallons of water.
It's an enormous lump of concrete. To actually knock a breach in that is going to take an enormous amount of explosive, and that was the problem.
September 1st, 1939. Germany invades Poland. The Nazis already occupied Czechoslovakia and Austria.
We shall defend our island.
On May 10th, 1940, the day that Winston Churchill becomes Prime Minister, Germany invades France, Belgium, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands. 1 month later, Paris falls to the Nazis.
This is a tremendous shock to the British. They suddenly realize that the full force, the full fury of blitzkrieg warfare is possibly going to fall on them. There is only one service that really stands a chance of preventing this, and that service is the Royal Air Force.
The RAF tries desperately to stop the Nazi aggression, but their raids into Germany are plagued with loss and inaccuracy.
The Royal Air Force at the beginning of the war proved in testing that navigation was pretty grim, that 45% of the navigators sent out to find the targets didn't find the targets. And then only 10% of the bombs laid down on the targets, if you found the targets, really hit the target.
Finding the target isn't the only challenge. Destroying something as massive as a dam with conventional bombs is considered impossible, and the major dams are protected from torpedo bombers with huge nets.
A dam is a deceptive target. Up close, the thing is immense. but from 10,000 feet, it's a dot on a map. And unless you can get a bomb onto that target in just the right place, you can forget about destroying a dam.
Little do the war planners know that a patriotic aircraft engineer named Barnes Wallis is inventing a new kind of weapon to do just that. His concept is bold, a 10-ton bomb that will shatter the Great Dams of Germany.
Wallace comes up with this idea. If you accept the fact that these bombs are landing all around the target, then perhaps what you do is you come up with this cosmically large bomb that you lay down somewhere near the target, and the shock wave through the earth will destroy the target.
It will be the largest bomb of its day.
This was an out-of-the-box thinker. Other people that looked at these problems looked at current ordnance that was to be had and current doctrine. But as an engineer, Wallace was able to look at them in a kind of a machine way. What would produce the effects that I want? And then, what can I create to make those effects happen?
In July of 1940, Wallace gets the opportunity to pitch his idea to the Ministry of Aircraft Production. They oversee the supply planes to the military, but more importantly, they fund research on new means of attack. The minister is hoping to recruit Wallace for a different project, but Wallace seizes the opportunity.
We have a project which we think your unique skills will be able to help us with.
Well, that's terrific, and I'm very excited to hear about it, but first, I really want to show you some work that I've been doing night and day. Take a look at this, gentlemen.
Wallace said, well, I don't want to do that. What I want to do is to tell you about the big bomb which I'm going to develop, which I think will win the war for us.
I think that we would be inclined to go ahead and fund further research in this.
Terrific. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you very much for coming in, Mr. Wallace.
You can count on me. I won't let you down.
He begins experimenting on a scale model of the Mona Dam, the primary target on the industrial hit list. Test after test, his results are disappointing.
Wallace was a determined man, and he was almost like a dog with a bone. He wouldn't let it go once he got hold of it.
As testing continues, Britain's fears of Nazi aggression are realized. The bombing offensive known as the Blitz begins. Over 8 months, from September 1940 to May of 1941, Nazi bombers drop 18,000 tons of explosives on England and kill over 30,000 people. The bombing strengthens Wallace's resolve to engineer an end to the war.
To Barnes Wallis, developing this weapon becomes a personal crusade. A crusade professionally, and a crusade in terms of his identity as a contributor to Britain's war effort.
On May 1st, 1942, Wallace gets a unique chance to try out his theory on a real dam in Wales.
So far, his tests had just been on smaller scale models. He really had no idea if the amount of explosive used and the connection to the explosive to the target would work.
The team carefully positions the equivalent of 10 tons of explosives in the water near the dam wall. If Wallace is right, the blast should create a shockwave powerful enough to destroy it. If he's wrong, it will be a serious setback for Britain's hope to crush the Nazi onslaught with a dam-busting bomb.
3, 2, 1.
May 1942. As German bombs rock Britain, an unconventional engineer tests an idea for a weapon that's way ahead of its time. The man is Barnes Wallis, whose beloved country is in desperate need of help. The moment in the making is a risky air raid in hopes of bringing the Nazi army to its knees. The machine is a radical new bomb designed to annihilate the massive dams of Germany. As an engineer who wants to personally contribute to the war effort, Barnes Wallis thinks a giant 10-ton dam-busting bomb is the way to cripple the Nazi war machine. But his unique weapon may never get off the drawing board if he can't prove the concept will work. Wallace and his research team are trying to blow up an obsolete dam with the scale equivalent of a 10-ton bomb.
3, 2, 1.
The dam doesn't budge. The team tries again and again until Wallace calculates that it will take a 20-ton bomb to break it.
Would you look at this? 10,000 pounds of explosive, and this is what we get.
Even he has to admit that 20 tons is too big a bomb for a plane to carry. Undaunted, Wallace goes back to the drawing board.
He knew exactly what he wanted to do, and he had an exact idea of how he was going to try to do it, and when it didn't come off, he thought of another one, and then he thought of another one, then he thought of another one, until he found the one that worked.
Wallace is a genius when it comes to engineering, but it's his persistence that may be his greatest gift. Even when things are going poorly, he's not a man to give up without a fight. That focus and single-minded determination are traits that have been with him his entire life. Born in 1887, Barnes Wallace is the second of 4 children in the middle-class family of Dr. Charles and Edith Wallace. The family is consistently strapped for cash. At age 13, Barnes is bright enough to test into a highly competitive public school.
He has to struggle very hard to make a success of himself, and he has to do so in a society that's very class-ridden at the time that he is growing up, and a society that places a great deal of emphasis on privilege. Wallace overcomes all this.
In 1903, at age 16, Wallace has a chance to continue on to university. But determined to become an engineer, he figures he has a better chance by becoming an apprentice building ship engines.
Wallace came from modest means. His mind, the brilliance of his mind, drove him forward. It gave him a scholarship. It drove him into the things and the passion of the things that he was interested in.
In 1913, 26-year-old Wallace lands a job in the fledgling airship department of Vickers, one of Britain's leading aviation companies. As an airship pioneer competing against Germany's Zeppelin industry, the young engineer finds a channel for his longing to help the British Empire.
Wallace was extremely patriotic, and therefore he would do anything he felt to further the cause of his country. Professionally, he was a man, one might say, of vision. He had ideas.
Wallace becomes lead designer of Vickers Airship Department. But on October 5th, 1930, tragedy strikes. The R-101, sister ship to one of Wallace's airships, crashes on its maiden voyage, killing 48 of the 54 people on board. It marks the end of Britain's dirigible program and Wallace's career in airships.
He always seems to be on a point of achieving something great, and then his hopes are frustrated by changes in circumstance. Nevertheless, he perseveres.
By the mid-1930s, Wallace is designing airplanes. He makes his name with the highly regarded Wellesley and Wellington bombers.
He was a man with an extremely fertile mind, large number of ideas, and if a genius is somebody who is able to think up different things, think laterally if you like, then Wallace was a genius.
By 1942, Wallace is assistant chief aircraft designer at Vickers. He's been working on a dam-busting bomb for 2 years with no progress. Finally, on July 24th, he has a breakthrough. Unlike previous attempts, this time they place the explosive in contact with the dam wall.
3, 2, 1.
Finally, success. Wallace now realizes that the only way to destroy a dam is to position the explosive right up against the wall.
The reason for that is that if you explode something some distance away from the dam wall, the water acts as a buffer against you. If you explode it in contact with the dam wall, the water acts in your favor.
Now Wallace has to figure out how to get his bomb in contact with the dam wall. He makes a startling discovery while experimenting with his daughter's marbles in a tub of water. If he launches the marbles from a low angle, they bounce right across the surface of the water. The concept of the bouncing bomb is born.
The first thing, was it worth pursuing? Answer, yes.
He also had to decide what type of spin to put on. Would he have no spin at all? Would he have forward spin? Or would he have backspin?
Watching films of his experiments, Wallace sees that backspin is the best option.
That rolling motion will then help roll it and indeed hold it in position as it sinks below the level of the waters to the point where it needs to detonate.
Wallace secures an airplane for large-scale testing. By January 1943, he's in the air dropping model bombs over water, but the weapon is far from finished. Time is running out for Barnes-Wallis. They need to attack the dams when the water levels in the reservoirs are at their highest, and that'll be in May, which is just 4 months away. Even though he's still in the experimental stages of developing his bomb, Wallace needs to convince the military brass now to give the go-ahead for the mission.
Mr. Wallace.
February 23, 1943. Wallace takes his case to the Commander-in-Chief of Bomber Command, Arthur Harris.
I'm quite appalled at the nature of the harebrained schemes that are presented to me by you inventors. The lives of my boys are far too precious.
Harris is leading the bombing effort against Germany. He can supply planes and air crew for an attack on the dams.
I believe I have designed a bomb and a transport mechanism for that bomb to take out the Mona Dam in Germany.
And just how do you propose to do this? What are you trying to do? Kill all my boys? Clearly, you're out of your mind.
Harris completely rejects the plan. Wallace thought he was close to success. Now, it looks like the bouncing bomb may never leave the ground.
I've given you enough of my time already. Good day, sir.
February 1943. The head of the Royal Air Force Bomber Command is pulling the plug on the bouncing bomb project. The man is Barnes-Wallis, a brilliant engineer whose plan to help the Empire is in jeopardy. The moment is an air attack on crucial Nazi dams, and precious time is slipping away. The machine is the bouncing bomb, a weapon so outrageous that it just might work.
Clearly, you're out of your mind.
Arthur Harris is dead set against assigning men and planes to such an untested and dangerous scheme.
Here is Harris, fighting the war. He is just getting his best heavy bomber, the Lancaster, off the assembly line. And not only did this chap come along with this thing that he doesn't think will work, but what's more, he wants 30 Lancasters out of the 123 for that month to carry out his attack. So a combination of these things makes Harris very hostile.
Seems that Wallace has come to the end of the line. If he can't convince the head of Bomber Command to believe in his weapon, then there's no hope for a mission. After countless hours of research and development, the project comes to a grinding halt, until fate turns in Wallace's favor. Harris writes his superior, the head of the Royal Air Force, Air Chief Marshal Charles Portal. He tells him his opinion of Wallace's plan.
I bet my shirt it will never work.
But Portal is in favor of targeting the dams.
I understand the risk.
Here, he thought, was an idea to attack this target, which had been identified as a major target since 1938. And in effect, he overruled Harris's objections.
And look, if you want to win the war, bust those dams.
3 days later, on February 26, 1943, the orders come down from the top.
We've decided to go forward with your mission.
Oh, terrific.
However, you must be ready to strike by May the 26th.
Wallace now has just over 2 months to do what he has promised. He's overwhelmed by the awesome responsibility before him.
He said, I felt sick because my bluff had been called. On many occasions I said I only needed 2 months to produce it. But having done that, he immediately got down to work, and the very next day was working on the drawings.
Wallace continues the air tests, but he's having problems. The prototypes don't bounce on a reliable path. With the deadline looming, the strain is showing.
Anxiety all the time. Am I doing the right thing? Being in charge of something is the very devil. If you are answerable for the whole thing, then God help you.
April 13th, 1943. On a test drop of a sphere at Reculver Beach, Wallace is dismayed to see the wooden shell break apart. But he notices that the cylindrical bomb casing continues to bounce. This is the eureka moment.
Wallace decided, well, wait a minute, because one or two of these have actually bounced on, let's take the outside off and let us go with the cylinder alone. And that's another critical decision. Roughly 1 month before the operation takes place, they decide on the nature of the weapon.
4 weeks later, Wallace finally tests a live bomb for the first time. It bounces precisely on target for 800 yards. Wallace's design at last is working. Wallace's bouncing bomb is codenamed Upkeep. More accurately described as a depth charge, it's a cylinder 5 feet long and 4 feet in diameter. Inside is 6,600 pounds of Torpex, an underwater explosive introduced in 1942 for torpedoes. Wrapped in a steel casing, its total weight is nearly 5 tons.
The ingenious solution is he spins it up in anti-clockwise fashion at 500 revolutions a minute so that this bomb will skip precisely off the surface but not have a tendency, if it was spun forward, to skip over the face of the dam.
The trick will be to release it when the plane is 450 feet from the dam at a ground speed of 230 miles per hour and an altitude of 60 feet.
Once it came to the proximity of the target itself, that backspin actually helped the bomb crawl down the wall of the target and then detonate at just the right depth.
Success depends on a series of difficult actions perfectly executed. Hitting a target with this kind of precision requires not just clever engineering, but also incredible flying. March 1943. The newly formed 617 Squadron begins training at Scampton Royal Air Force Base.
Those young men, all in their 20s, some in their late teens, had flown many missions already against the Germans. Many of them had already survived 2 combat tours. There were Englishmen, there were Brits, Australians, Canadians, New Zealanders were in this.
Leading them is Wing Commander Guy Gibson. Only 24 years old, Gibson is a veteran of an unheard of 170 missions. At a time when only 1 in 6 men return from their first tour of 30 operations, Gibson is a legend. Now, Gibson must quickly train the crews for a raid that's just weeks away.
This is a man that did not have the luxury of time. The bag of worms that Wing Commander Gibson was given to form a squadron in less than 2 months from nothing, no aircraft, I mean, he didn't even have paper clips.
The squadron will have to quickly master night flying at the dangerously low altitude of 60 feet.
They only had 7 weeks to train for this raid. 7 weeks to train for something that no one had ever done before.
The crews will be flying the Lancaster, the RAF's brand new 4-engine bomber. The Lancaster has a 102-foot wingspan, so flying at only 60 feet up, if you dip a wing, it could be fatal. Gauging altitude is a key problem the crews must overcome.
The difficulty, and especially in an area like the Ruhr where you have industrial haze, is that you will get slightly hazy conditions forming over the water, which means that it's very difficult to tell where the haze ends and the water begins.
To solve this, the men fix 2 spotlights to the bottom of the airplane. The lights are angled to intersect when the airplane is flying at exactly 60 feet. Crews work together to watch the spots and direct the pilot higher or lower until they meet.
Every bomber crew was a very closely knit team. They were very, very conscious that all their lives depended on each other.
All clear, lads?
Good, sir.
Clear. Good. Good work.
May 14th, 1943, a coded message comes through to begin what is now called Operation Chastise. Barnes-Wallis has worked for 3 years, and the flight crews have dropped over 2,000 practice bombs in preparation for this moment.
Men.
May 16th, 1943. Wallace and Guy Gibson brief the crews.
We're going to hit the major dams of Germany, including the Mona Dam. Here to explain the ops in a little more detail to you, Mr. Wallace.
Thank you, sir. Gentlemen.
The first time that the majority of the squadron ever met Barnes-Wallis was at the briefing. Everybody was sort of wondering, who is this man up there with this big shock of white hair and not in uniform, and what's he doing here to brief?
I can see by the expressions on some of your faces you think this is a far-fetched idea. I assure you it's not. Please allow me to explain.
They're facing the industrial heartland targets deep in the heart of very heavily defended German airspace, where you have interneted fighters, anti-aircraft artillery, radar, and communications, what we would call today an integrated air defense network. A very, very tough nut to crack.
I know it will work, gentlemen, and I know you are the lads to do it.
Cheers. Mr. Wallace, I'll see you in a couple of hours, sir.
I'll buy the first round in the pub.
First of many, sir.
Good hunting, Commander. Don't let anything happen to you or your boys.
If anything does, it won't be your fault.
In the closing hours, Wallace considers the human cost that comes with his invention. He fears that for some of these men, this will be their last mission. May 16th, 1943. 19 bomber crews are about to embark on one of the riskiest raids of World War II. The man, Barnes-Wallis, has struggled to bring a new weapon to life. Now it's in the hands of 133 brave young men. The moment is here, a daring assault on the Nazi war machine and Germany's giant dams. The machine is the bouncing bomb, whose final testing ground will be the industrial core of an implacable enemy. At 9 p.m., the airmen head for their planes.
I don't believe my father ever really talked about that he was going to die or thought he was going to die, but I think they all believed that they probably that night may not make it home.
From this point on, Barnes-Wallis can only wait and watch as he passes responsibility to the crews. The operation presents unparalleled hazards for the airmen because they'll be flying at a dangerously low altitude within sight and range of Nazi guns. One mistake can mean disaster. In plane number 2 is 21-year-old Flight Sergeant John Fraser of the Royal Canadian Air Force. Married just 18 days earlier, he joins his pilot John Hopgood as bomb aimer. The navigator is fellow Canadian Ken Earnshaw, who reveals to Fraser dark feelings of foreboding.
What do you think about tonight?
I think we're going to lose a few. I think we're going to be one of them.
The navigator's premonition is something that John Fraser's daughter will never forget.
It was quite profound because he knew him, and I think the fact that Ken was saying that was a real reality check for both of them, and I'm sure they were both very frightened.
At 9:39 p.m., their plane takes off with one of the huge bouncing bombs called Upkeep hanging from its belly.
Okay, flight. Rear gunner. Prepare for takeoff.
Here we go again, boys.
Their destination is the Mona Dam.
You think about this thing at night, low level, night, penetration, no lights, over land. Then you make your approach over water. These people really had their lives in the hands of the young men that were sitting in those pilot seats on that flight.
The 19 bombers will target 6 dams. The first wave of 9 planes will start at the Mona and then go on to attack the Ader Dam. The next 5 planes will target the massive Sorpa Dam. The remaining 5 will stand by as a reserve. If all goes well, there are 3 additional dams on the target list. Wing Commander Gibson leads a formation of 3 planes. They fly at less than 100 feet of altitude as they cross the North Sea.
Approaching the coast!
I can see the coast! Okay, lights out. No talking. Here we go.
The only way that you have a chance to get in against those targets and survive is to go in below the level of the German radar so that their defenses are basically caught napping. They don't even know you're there.
Suddenly, the napping Germans wake up. The planes are picked up by Nazi searchlights and come under intense fire. Hopgood's plane with Fraser and Earnshaw on board is hit.
Hoppy's been hit! Bloody hell, are you okay, Hoppy?
I think I'm all right. Carry on.
We've been hit, sir, but we're going to carry on.
They never heard again from the front gunner. Hopgood was already injured. Several of the crew were injured, and they went on to their target.
Another plane in the next group will not be so lucky. Before they even reach the first target, one Lancaster is shot down. At 12:15 a.m., about 2.5 hours after takeoff, the planes arrive at the Mona Dam.
All cooler aircraft. I'm going to attack. Stand by to come in when I tell you.
Roger, leader. Good luck.
Gibson, in plane number 1, goes in with spotlights glaring. The approaching bomber looks like an easy target for the gunners defending the dam.
Okay, here we come. It's simple duck shooting. Just shoot us down. And that's really how my dad put it. It was like simple duck shooting.
Inside Gibson's plane, they struggle to line up the target.
Gunners ready. She's coming up, Spam. Turn on the belly lights.
Down now! Down! Down! Little left! Left! One gone! Pull up now! Get us out of here! Pull up!
Guy Gibson has dropped the first bouncing bomb, but it explodes too far from the wall. The dam is unharmed. At Bomber Group headquarters in Grantham, England, the mood is tense. Wallace is there with a man who may be his greatest skeptic, the Commander-in-Chief of Bomber Command, Arthur Harris. Now all either man can do is wait.
It must be a tremendous kind of mortal test to have your own adversary, Harris, sitting right in the same room, prepared, obviously, to give him a massive "I told you so."
The chief signals officer is standing by to decode messages from the planes. The pilots radio the word "goner" to indicate that they've dropped their bomb.
Goner. No apparent breach.
No. Well, that's no good.
Above the Mona Dam, bomb aimer John Fraser hears Gibson calling over the radio.
Call Sue. It's your turn to attack.
Preparing to attack. Stand by, rear gunner. They're opening up.
Hopgood, piloting plane number 2, goes in for the attack. But as they approach the dam, they're hit in the starboard wing.
Hell, we're on fire!
Gunner number 2!
Terror was taking them over as soon as the aircraft was hit, as soon as it was on fire. There was one thing that they had to do was to get rid of upkeep and try to save the crew.
In desperate condition, they press on and Fraser releases his bomb. Too late.
Bomb's gone! Bomb's gone!
It bounces over the dam and hits the power station behind it.
Prepare to abandon aircraft!
Get out, you bloody fools! We're going down!
I can't keep the altitude!
Hopgood pulls the plane up to give the crew a chance to escape. They make it to 300 feet when Fraser pulls the ripcord on his parachute and jumps.
As he left the aircraft, his parachute had already deployed, and within something like 3 or 4 seconds, he'd hit the ground. That shows how low that they were. So, I mean, he was incredibly lucky to survive.
Fraser sees his plane with Hopgood and his friend Earnshaw still on board crash in flames.
For anybody to, first of all, have gotten out of that aircraft was a miracle. Anybody. But the fact that my father survived that without any real injury is an absolute incredible thing.
Fraser walks away without a scratch. He spends the next 10 days on the run before he's captured and then spends the next 2 years as a POW. For him, the war is over. But for now, the Mona Dam still stands strong. Back in England, Barnes-Wallis is with Bomber Command Chief Harris, who is still convinced that Wallace has sent his men on a suicide mission.
The idea among critics was that perhaps you could hit these with a bomb, but indeed you might be just hitting them and hitting them and hitting them with no real effect. So if you look at the overall percentages for success here, they're about 50-50.
So far, it's all bad news. 2 planes are lost, and 2 bombs have failed to breach the dam. It seems that Harris may be right, and Operation Chastise is doomed. It's past midnight on May 17, 1943, and a bold attack on Nazi dams is underway. 2 planes have been shot down, and 2 bombs have failed to destroy the target. German gunners are defending the dam with everything they've got. The man, gifted engineer Barnes-Wallis, waits as hope for success grows dim. The moment has arrived. The remaining planes must release their weapons in the face of heavy Nazi fire. The machine, called Upkeep, is the bouncing bomb, an experimental weapon with only one chance to prove its worth. The remaining planes are in a race against time to crack the Mona Dam before German night fighters arrive. The big bombers will have little chance of escaping the high-performance Nazi aircraft. Gibson and his men need to put ordnance on target and fast. At Operation Headquarters in England, Barnes-Wallis waits with increasing anguish.
Each of the aircraft transmits by wireless back the word goner, which means that their bombs are gone. But the code word that signifies that the dam has been breached is not heard, and the tension is just rising in this room.
Over the Mona Dam, Wing Commander Guy Gibson calls the 3rd plane in to attack.
Are you ready? Roger, leader.
Smoke from the burning power station makes aiming difficult.
I can't see the towers, hey? How are we looking?
Right, just a bit. Just a bit. Good. Hold. Steady. Steady. All right, bomb's gone. Bomb's gone.
Bombs away, leader.
But this bomb, too, has no effect.
These dams were very, very large, powerful, resilient dams. The Mona Dam dated to 1912. It was the largest in Europe. All of them necessarily could possibly be tremendous absorbers of punishment.
Gibson calls in the 4th plane.
Right, go ahead, Cooler 4. Okay, flight leader. Cooler 4, commencing bomb run. Let me know when you're in position. Okay, flight leader. Apple is set. Nothing happening. My God! I think I've broken it!
With the dam now severely cracked, flight crews are counting on the 5th plane to hit its mark and bring down the Mona. A breach 250 feet wide opens up the wall. With 2 bombs in exactly the right place, the Mona Dam is broken.
Oh, look at it!
From Gibson's standpoint, it must have been phenomenal to watch these 2 bombs go in. The first bomb actually cracked the dam, and the second bomb that went in and blew up in effectively the right place was just icing on the cake. That dam was going down, and it must have been one amazing sight.
Millions of gallons of water sweep down the valley, swallowing everything in sight and leaving a trail of destruction and death.
Okay, Popsy, Johnny, set a course for home. The rest of you, on to the next target.
12:56 a.m. Gibson's plane transmits word of success.
Gibson is just a number. And they've done it. They've done it.
Bravo!
Bravo! They've done it. They've done it.
And Harris, here's this phlegmatic, taciturn, stony-faced CNC of Bomber Command, leaps from his seat, pumps his fists in the air, and says to Wallace, "Wallace, you could sell me a pink elephant."
The planes go on to break one more dam, the nearby Ader. Crews from the second and third waves damage the Sorpa and one other dam. As the sun rises, the survivors touch down at Scampton Airfield. Although the mission is successful, the mood is somber.
We did quite well, Mr. Wallace.
Out of the 19 airplanes to take off in that mission, 8 are lost. If you take a look at the air crew, the number of air crew that are lost in that flight, you lose 56 people. That represents 42% losses. A very, very, very costly mission.
Industry in the Ruhr Valley halts. 11 factories, including ironworks and armaments plants, are completely destroyed. 114 more are damaged. Power stations, bridges, and a military airfield are swept away by the flood, as are more than 1,200 people.
Upkeep had perhaps more physical impact than its critics have given it credit for. It certainly didn't win the war, and it certainly didn't have a long-term devastating effect on German industry. However, in the immediate area of the Möhne Dam, it was classed a catastrophe by the local authorities.
Winston Churchill is in Washington when the news breaks. He receives a standing ovation in Congress. Guy Gibson and 33 others receive medals, and the king pays a visit to the squadron.
What it came to be is one of those times when ordinary men did extraordinary things in the face of almost incalculable odds and achieved an objective which no one, certainly not the Commander-in-Chief of Bomber Command himself, had thought would be possible, and they carried it off.
But the bouncing bomb will never be used again.
The Germans knew darn well what it could do, and immediately after the operation, within 48 hours, it started to reinforce the dams with anti-aircraft guns, with smoke screens, with searchlights. And so dams virtually were off the agenda. And if you didn't use them against dams, it was very difficult to see what you could use them against.
The dams raid is the start of a long relationship between Wallace and 617 Squadron. Over the next 2 years, he designs 2 more bombs that the squadron drops on German targets. He even realizes his dream of a 10-ton bomb.
You have many people throughout the course of history who were technological savants who effected changes or inspired other people to do things that was far outside their ordinary capabilities. And Wallace was clearly one of those people. It's the human spirit which marshals itself against identified evil and says, I can defeat that, I can use my skills, I can use the technology that we know, and we will accept the risk.
Wallace continues to create innovative weapons and aircraft for the rest of his life. His last project is a Mach 5 airliner designed to fly from London to Australia in 3 hours. Like many of his ideas, it's ahead of its time and is never made. In 1979, 92-year-old Barnes Wallace dies peacefully in his sleep. Barnes Wallace and his bouncing bomb arrive at just the right moment in the war when the British are desperate enough to take a chance on a long shot. On a moonlit night in May 1943, one man's ingenious device, combined with the bravery and dedication of the Lancaster air crews, strike a blow to the Nazi war machine. The M3 Factor's power to shape history is a subject we'll continue to explore on Man, Moment, Machine.
There are always going to be surprises.
You don't have to speak the language to be able to interact with people.
Knowing that can make you